This is Friday, March 20th, and I'm going to start with number 54 on page 326. So if you notice, g of x is defined to be the integral from 1 to x of f of t dt, which tells us that if we take the derivative of g, we will end up with f of x. So in this problem, not only are we accumulating area, but I also want you to think of g prime as the graph that you're looking for in this case. Now, g of 1 is going to be equal to 0, because if you integrate from 1 to 1, you get 0. Now, g of 3, if you collect from 1 to 3, the area here is the area is 1, but because it's below the x-axis, we are going to designate that as -1. Now, to go to -1, we are going to consider this to be a circle, which is pi r squared, which gives us 4 pi, but since it's only a quarter of a circle, we're going to divide this by 4. And so our answer here would be pi. Now, if you go from 1 to -1, then that is going to be equal to the opposite of -1 to 1. So this turns out to be negative pi. Now we're going to use that answer again in part E. For part D, it says find the values of x at which g has a relative maximum. Remember that, as I said earlier, g prime is equal to f. And f has positive values here and then negative values here. So that means at 1, g prime, which is f, goes from positive to 0 to negative. So that signals that there's a relative max at x is equal to 1, since g prime changes sign from positive to 0 to negative. Write an equation for the line tangent to the curve at -1. So we have an ordered pair for g of -1 is negative pi. And so we have y minus negative pi. And then we're going to come back to get the slope here in a minute. And then this would be x plus 1. Now to find that slope of g, we just need to look at the value of f at -1. And if you take the value of f at -1, you get 2. Therefore, we know that the slope of g at -1 is 2. So we end up with y plus pi equals 2x plus 2. And if we get y by itself, we could write this as y equals 2x plus 2 minus pi. And this would be the slope of the tangent line. Now, in number 56, this is another trapezoid problem, or trapezoidal rule problem, I should say. We're filling a swamp, and the horizontal spacing they told us was 20. So I'm going to take 20 divided by 2. And the first one would be 146, and then 122. The next one would be 122 and 76, and so forth. Now, once we have this area, then we need to multiply by the average depth of 5. So I'm going to multiply it by 5 for the depth, and then once I get the depth tells us that multiplied by the area would give us a volume of about 4, I got this many cubic feet. Now, there's nothing wrong with this answer. When I was checking my answer, they gave it as an answer in cubic yards. So I got about 1487 cubic yards. And the way we do that is we divide by 27, because in a cubic yard it's 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. And so in 1 cubic yard there is 27 cubic feet.